We're going to be reading Brian Jake's Castaways of the Flying Dutchman, Chapter 43. Will's ma had taken little William to her bed with her in Winnie's room on the ground floor of on the sofa formerly occupied by little William. Mr. Blaithwaite lay wrapped in his gown, overcome by slumber. Hetty took the plaid traveling rug and covered him with it. Good old fella. It was him who thought of lighting the candle that got us started. Mackie bobbed his head in a small bow. But I've no doubt he couldn't have gotten much further without the help of your lady's excellent work all around. Amy, Elaine, and Mrs. Wynne were far too excited to contemplate sleep. They showed the results of their labors to the menfolk, who had told them of the capture of the London troughs. The blue-eyed boy took a look at the writing, then at the old maps with the 4 dots upon it. It's marked here as East Path. Where's that? Elaine blushed in the lamplight. Oh, it is a pretty little lane. Me, Will, and me used to walk there when we was courting. Mr. Mackey knew a bit about the area. Ah, yes, East Path. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but isn't that old stagecoach way to the east of the village square? John confirmed the solicitor's words. Aye, that's the place, old shipmate. Once the new road was built from Hayford for the wagoners to use, the path fell into disrepair, of course. That'd be nigh on 100 years back. East Path will be overgrown and we'll have right a job of trying to locate a milestone. Will shook his head. Oh no, we won't, friend. I recall tripping over that stone and spraining my ankle one evening when I was running. Amy chuckled. Were you chasing after Elaine? Will's big, jolly wife gave Amy a nudge, almost knocking her over. No, it was I who was chasing after Will. Viciously to this talk of a romantic escapade. Harumph, yes, well, we're going to need spades, lanterns, and so on. Shall we get started? Our time is short now. The gig was loaded up, ready to go. Ben stood at the door with Mrs. Wynne. The old lady looked very tired. She hugged him affectionately. You go back inside and have a nice nap, Mrs. Wynne. Leave this to us. I promise we'll come back here with anything we find straight away. She kissed Ben's cheek. I'll have breakfast ready for you. The dog was obviously holding a mental conversation with Horatio. As they climbed into the gig, Ben eyed the Labrador, who was, What's going on between you two, Ned? Black Labrador's laid his chin on Ben's lap. I told him to keep an eye on things while we were gone. The boy scratched the back of the dog's ears. I suppose you gave him a lot of nonsense about sardines and butterflies and mice. Poor old Horatio, he's got a bit of a one-track mind. Ned shook his head. No, surprisingly, he said he'd watch the house over the house, and if anything happened, he'd track us down and let me know. I think Horatio's finally come to his senses, just in time. Can't go around with a head full of sardines and butterflies all his life. Delilah trotted dutifully through the darkened village, passing the almshouse and heading up the overgrown path. It became very dim. Overshadowed by an archway of overhanging trees, Ben was imagining what it had been like all those years ago. Stagecoaches laden with passengers and mail, carriages bearing merchants and gentry, carts laden with produce, all of them fearful to be traveling such a lonely and shady path where highwaymen and thieves might lurk. The strange boy glimpsed the crescent moon struggling to cast its light through the leafy canopy. Unwittingly, his mind wandered back to the Flying Dutchman, Vanderdecker and his villainous crew. They would probably have reveled in the highwayman's trade. Amy bumped against him as the gig lurched to a stop. Don't go to sleep, Ben. I think we've arrived at the place. 3 lanterns brought the seaman, lit them, and gave one to each of his friends. Here you are, mates. You're in charge of the lighting and the maps. Stay close to him. Mr. Mackey and me and Will can do the digging. Where's Will? Elaine had unharnessed Delilah from the shafts, allowing her to rest and crop the grass. She pointed over yonder to the other side of the path. Hetty raised her voice. You found it yet, Will? The dairyman called out to his wife. No, not yet, my dear. Ouch! The maidservant Hetty could be heard giggling. You found it now, Will? Tripped straight over it? Like as not sprained your ankle again? William was thankfully the darkness had hid his furious blushes. No harm done. Bring the light over here, you young'uns. A massive oak tree overshadowed the path. At that point, behind the shade of the outstretched limbs, a half-buried milestone had been standing for centuries. Ben held the lamp close. Look, this is it. Chapelvale, 1 mile. See the letter beneath? M of mile. There's an arrow pointing straight downward. The Labrador passed him in observant thought. Or is it supposed to be pointing outward, like the one on the tree at the ruined smithy? Ben looked at the lawyer. What do you think, sir? Do we dig down, or is this arrow meant to be point outward to another spot? Adjusting the glasses on his nose, the solicitor peered at the stone. Do you know, I'm not sure. What's your opinion, John? The old seaman put down the spade and pickaxe he had brought from the gig. What's to say, sir? There ain't no clues telling us what the number of paces we should tread if we're to dig in another place. Hetty settled the argument by taking a penny from her apron pocket. Trust to luck, says I. Toss a coin, tail we digs down, heads we dig somewhere else onward from the arrow. She spun the coin. Alex held the lantern over where it fell. It's tails. Chapter 44. Got a pocket watch. Morning sunlight filtered into the bedroom as Maud Bowie sat at the bedroom mirror, inserting a last chip into her embroidered hairdo. The Smithers household had grown peacefully quiet since the young horror Wilfred had departed for boarding school. Accompanied by his mother, Mrs. Smithers would take up lodgings close to the school until her dear Wilfred was settled in, as she put it. Maud smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Today was the last day she would have to spend in Chapelvale, dreadful rural backwater. Hetty, where the blazes are you? I want my breakfast. Arriving downstairs, Maud found Mr. Smithers red-faced and irate. Ah, Miss Bowie, have you seen the maid, and is she dusting upstairs? Maudie swished by him on her way to the kitchen. No, she's not. If she'd been anywhere within a mile of the house, she'd have heard you bellowing, sir. Smithers followed her out, watching as she put the kettle on the butter and slice of bread. What are you doing, miss? Cutting the bread into triangles, she placed it on a plate. Making my breakfast, obviously. It must be clear, even to you, that Hetty can't come here for some reason. Smithers waved his hands uselessly. But the table isn't laid. My dress clothes haven't been brought out from the wardrobe. Nothing's been done. Wine glasses, sherry decanters, side trays, and clean linen. Where are they? I'm supposed to be holding a reception this afternoon for the country planners, a magistrate business associates arriving from all over to begin our plans. Maud spooned tea leaves into the pot. Then you'll just have to change your arrangements. I'm not your maid of all work. Smithers wiped sweat from his reddening brow. Piece of butter, bread and butter, and a cup of tea is no breakfast for a man to start a full day on, eh? He blinked under Maudie's frosty stare. Then cook something for yourself. This is my breakfast. Having made tea, Maud put it on a tray with the bread and butter and retired to the garden. A few moments passed before Smithers emerged, eating a slice of bread with strawberry jam slathered on it and holding a beer tankard filled with milk. He plunged himself moodily down next to her at the wrought iron table. That maid Hetty, finished, bag and baggage. Maud curled her lip in disgust as the milk spilled down Smithers' chin from the tanker. He wiped it off on his sleeve. What are you turning your nose up at, little Miss High and Mighty? All very prim and proper, aren't you? What happened to your bull boys from London? Never turned up, did they? Well, whatever or not, things'll go ahead today. You'll see. I've got it all organized on my own, without your help, Missy. Maud was about to make a cutting reply when a carter wearing a burlap apron appeared at the gate and shouted, "Hoy, Mr. Smithers! We have that stuff you wired brought over from Anford. Been waiting in the village square since 6:30. What do you want to do with it?" Smithers yanked the oversized watch from his vest pocket. 7:20 already? I'd better get moving. Listen, you'd best get down to the station at 9:10. Meet the officials. Don't be late now, do you hear? Maud shooed a sparrow away from her plate. I'll hardly likely to be late to a meeting with my own father. Smithers stopped in his tracks. Your own father? You never said about him arriving today. Maud considered her lacquer nails carefully. He'll be traveling from London with some investors just to check on the amounts of money paid out to the villagers. They're arriving on the 8:50 to meet with the magistrate and county planners coming up down at 9. I'll show them the way to the square. You'd best have things ready there. Maud thought Obadiah Smithers looked ready to take a fit. He stood scarlet-faced and quivering. Check the money? What's the matter? Doesn't the man trust me? Maud was satisfied her nails were perfect. She reflected coolly. When it comes to business, my father trusts nobody. At 8:15, Bold Evans opened the front door on the tea shop and began sweeping over the step with a broom. She noticed a view she stopped to view the activity in the square. Directly in front of the notice board post, two wagons had pulled up. Men were unloading a table, chairs, and what looked like a small marquee with an open front. Smithers was directing two men to put a large sign painted on plywood. Shopkeeper Baldwin called to her husband, "Do I look like you see what's happening out there?" Dia Evans emerged, wiping flour from his hands, and gave a long, mournful sigh. Whoa, look at that now, will ya? Our village square is full of strangers. Read me that notice, will ya, Baldwin? I ain't got my glasses on with me. She read it aloud slowly. Progressive Development Company Limited. Payments made here for all land and properties within the Chapelvale area. All persons wishing to receive the stipulated compensation must be in possession of legal deeds to their land and property, or payment cannot be made. Blowing her nose loudly in her apron, Bolden wiped her eyes on it. It's sad for the village, Dia. I never thought I'd see the day. Dia put an arm around his wife. There, lovely. You make a cup of tea. I'll go and look for the deeds to our shop. Baldwin stopped watching Smithers approaching. She called over her shoulder to Dia. You'll find him in the blue hat box on top of the wardrobe. Smithers had a spring in his step and a happy smile on his face. He touched his hat brim to Baldwin cheerfully. Morning, Mom. Another golden day of summer. Am I too early to order breakfast and a large pot of tea? Baldwin Evans drew herself up to full height, which was considerable, and stared down from the front of her shop. Put 1 foot over this step, boyo, and I'll crack the broom over your skull. Smithers beat a hasty retreat back to the square, where he began finding fault and bullying the workmen. Baldwin held her aggressive pose for a moment, then sighed unhappily and leaned on the broom. Chapelvale, the little village she had come to love so much, was about to be destroyed. In a short time, the drapers, the butchers, post office, general store, and the ironmongers, those neat small shops with their wares gangly displayed behind well-polished windows, would stand empty, waiting for demolition, their former owners gone off to other places. Even the almshouse, with its tall, shady trees in the lane behind, would be trampled under the wheel of progress. children dashing eagerly into her tea shop, pennies clutching in their hands for ice cream cones, old ladies wanting to sit and chat over pots of Indian and China tea and cakes of hot buttered scones. That would soon be little more than a memory to her, but such a beautiful memory. Baldwin Evans lifted an apron hem to her face and cried for the loss of the place she knew as home. Chapter 45. Mr. Mackey's office window, the clock stood at 9:30. A lot of people had gathered in the square at Chapelvale. It was as the Smithers had predicted, a good summer's day with hardly a breeze stirring and the sun beaming out of a cloudless blue sky. However, the square was still and silent despite the large gathering of villagers. Purvisell Bowie made with his daughter Maud upon his arm. In subdued voices they made small talk with their magistrate, the country planning officer, and their lawyers. Principal shareholders who had travelled up from London stood apart with the project engineers. They carried low-key conversations, ever so often casting quick glances over the marquee shade at the faces outside of the sad, puzzled, hostile villagers. Smithers felt untidy and out of place, trying unsuccessfully to mingle with those in the marquee. He approached Mr. Bowie, rubbing his hands nervously. "The tea shop is closed today, or I'd have sent for some refreshments." He wilted under the icy stares of Maud and her father, writing wiping perspiration from his collar with a grubby finger. Smithers shrugged apologetically. "I was going to have a reception at the house, but the maid's off, ha, ha." Purvisell Bowie had a sonorous voice that any undertaker might have admired. "So, I'm gathered, sir. Not quite what I was led to be expected from your letters. What time is it?" Eager to please, Smithers fumbled out his oversized watch. 9:40 exactly, Mr. Bowie. 9:40, sir." Mr. Bowie touched the pearl stick he wore in his cravat. "Those bumpkins out there will stand all day, staring dumbly at us like a herd of cattle. Do you think they might wise to encourage them forward? I assume they will want payment for the properties today, as small as it is." There was nobody about to do Smithers shouting for him. Actually embarrassed, he stood outside the marquee, facing the villagers. He cleared his throat, conscious of the carter and men from Hadford chuckling behind his back. He held forth both hands like a politician at a meeting. Good morning. Will you please listen to me? I want you to form an orderly line, no pushing ha, ha. We will begin the payments for those who have their deeds or approximated papers with them." There was not a move from the villagers. They stood silent. Smithers tried again, this time his voice of reason. "Oh, come on now. It's for your own good. Form a line. Right here where I'm standing. Come on, please, anyone." Bowie Evans' voice rang out from her bedroom window. "For our own good, isn't it? You got any relation to Judas? He sold the Lord for 30 pieces of silver." The Hayford men gawked aloud. One or two clapped. Smithers glared at the window before marching back to the marquee and confronted Bowie. "They're not moving. Can't you do anything?" Bowie looked over Smithers' shoulder at those outside. Men, women, children in hand, none moving. "Give it half an hour or so. I'll send out my London lawyers to read them the official notice. Any of those bumpkins too stupid to understand it will have to stand and wait out there until sundown. But then the bailiff will have arrived with his deputies, and they'll hand out any unpaid moneys to and possesses their houses and properties by force, if necessary." Mr. Bowie turned away from Smithers. As he did, his eye caught a movement. It was a two-wheeled dairy cart carrying 4 women and a baby. A young girl and a boy held the reins, leading the horse behind them. Behind the cart stood 4 men, one boy and his black Labrador slightly to one side of the cavalcade. A police sergeant marched, nodding amiably to the village folk. Mr. Bowie gave an inward sigh of relief. At last these Rucuses were coming forward. He moved the table from the marquee, calling to his colleagues, "To your places, gentlemen. Our first customers are here." To the lawyers, the magistrates, and an official with a bag containing a ledger and a wad of certified money papers, taking their seats, Maud Bowie tried to whisper something to her father, but he ignored her, putting on a smile, false conditionally. Bowie addressed the group. "Well, well, it's nice to see decent folk acting sensibly. Hope you've bought your deeds along with ye." Mackie ignored Maud's father and strode up to the table, looking very dapper from his clean-shaven face to his crisp white shirt, freshly pressed trousers, and tailcoat. Placing a leather satchel on the table, he opened it and produced a long, ancient-looking scroll, which he unrolled. Looking over the top of his nose, he inquired politely, "Which one of you is the magistrate?" The magistrate stared over the top of his spectacles. "I am, sir. State your business and name, please." Seizing with impatience and excitement, the dapper lawyer kept his feelings hidden as he announced in a voice that could be heard through all the village. "I, sir, am Philip Teasdale Mackey, a solicitor and chartered member of the legal profession. I represent Mrs. Winifred Wynne, who resides in Chapelvale. On her behalf, it is my duty to inform you that this lady's lays claim and title to the entire village, up to its boundaries, and all dwellings, houses, places of business, and land within the coulterage of such establishments." In the silence that followed, a pin could have been heard. Then the magistrate spoke. "I trust you have proof of this unusual claim, sir?" Mr. Mackey's eyes never left the astounding official. With a dramatic flourish, he held out his right arm, palm open. Amy and her brother stepped forward, picking up the weighty scroll and unrolled it and placed it on the lawyer's manicured hand. He grasped it firmly by the top. It was a huge gold and purple wax hanging from it. These were sealed with blobs of scarlet wax with gold medallions set into them. The diminutive figure of the lawyer seemed to increase in stature. His voice boomed triumphantly like a town crier. "Be it known to all my subjects, nobles, vassals, and yeomanry, I do acknowledge the valiant deeds of my liege Captain Cara de Win in the capture of the French fleet and our victory at Souls. He served in his sovereignty and his country right worthily, no man braver than he. Hereby grant unto him freely the acres of our good English land, to be known hereon as Chapelvale, Cairn del Win. His sons, daughters, and all who come after bearing the name Win will have the squiredom over this place, without let our hindrance tax or tithing, for as long as my monarchy shall rule our fair land, let no man raise his voice or wrath against my edict. May the family of Wynne serve God, England, with loyalty, faith, and forbearance. Given by my hand on this Lammas day in the year of our Lord, 1341, by the grace of God, Edward III, King of England." Ringing cheers and shouts of delight erupted throughout the village square. Hats flew in the air and cobblestones echoed as stamping his feet. People hugged and kissed and others indiscriminately. It was a scene of total jubilation. The black Labrador dodged beneath the gig as Ben was surrounded by his friends. Will and John, shaking his hand with Mrs. Wynne and Amy, seized him and kissed him both his cheeks. Mr. Blaithwaite pounded the boy's back, shouting, "We did it, boy! We did it!" Catching his breath, Ben roared, "No, it was you who did it, friends. I only started the search. Me and good old Ned." The Labrador sent a thought beneath the gig. "Keep me out of this, mate. I don't want to be crushed and battered and slobbered over." When the blue-eyed boy managed to break free, he saw Alex with a crowd of young people congratulating him. Among them was Regina Woodworthy and the former members of the Grange gang. Alex clasped Ben's hand. Look at my brother, the village hero. Thanks to you, Ben. The boy warded off an embrace from Elaine and little William, who had painted his face with toffee apple somebody had given him. Don't be silly, pal. Look at Ned. He knows the safest place under the cart. Come on, Amy. They scrambled beneath the gig, laughing at the sight of Bloodworth Evans leaning out of the bedroom window, waving a Union Jack and a Welsh red dragon flag and hooting, put those deeds back in my hat box, dear. Let's open the shop. Mr. Bowie's normally sallow face had taken an ashen gray parlor as he turned his accusing gaze to Obadiah Smithers. So, the old lady's present? No problem, eh? Fool! I should never have listened to you and your harebrained schemes. Do you realize what this will cost for my company? Smithers collapsed into a vacant chair, his eyes wide with disbelief. I, I'm ruined. Bowie stood over him, jabbing a finger savagely into the Smithers' arm to accentuate each word. If you aren't, then I'll make sure you are. You'll be glad to get a job selling matches on the street corner when I'm done with you. Straightening up, Bowie offered an arm to his daughter. Maud, I'll talk to you back in London. Come on, girl. We'll miss the train. They turned to go and walked straight into Sergeant, whose voice was flat and official. Mr. Prezel, Bowie, and Mrs. Maud Bowie, I'd like you to come to the station house with me. Mr. Bowie, who tried stepping to one side, flinched as the strong arm of the law captured his shoulder. Sergeant Patterson whispered confidentially in his ear, Now, sir, you don't want yourselves to up to all the folk around here. You and the young lady quietly. I've got 4 of your employees in my holding cell. A vehicle theft charge. They're making all sorts of accusations against Bowie and Company. I'm sure it's quite unsustained. I'd just like to take you on a stroll up there, and we'll sort it all out. Mr. Mackey folded the scroll and handed it to the seaman. Mrs. Wynne linked arms with the solicitor. We'll see all the business is done here. Let's go for lunch. Mrs. Evans has invited us all over to the tea shop for a celebration. Waving her glove, the old lady called out to her friends, Come on, you 3, bring Ned too. It's free ice cream today. Mr. Mackey straightened his cravat. Just a moment, marm. He turned to the magistrate. Excuse me, sir. Perhaps you'd like to join us. Distancing himself from the company shareholders, the magistrate smiled his approval. It would be a pleasure, sir. Chapter 46. There's that stone they found the deeds under. Evans' tea shop put on a wonderful spread. The Evans pushed 4 tables close to the friends could sit together. Baldwin brought a tray after tray of sandwiches, teas, cakes, and ice cream, dismissing any offer of payment. Look you, 'tis the least we could do for the folk who saved our village. Indeed, to goodness, put that money away, ho! It was just to see Obadiah Smithers' face. In the name of heavens, though, how did you find those deeds? Mr. Blaithwaite scratched his wiry mop. Deeds, you say, marm? Well, afraid I can't enlighten you. I was asleep on Mrs. Wynne's sofa. Yes, you tell her. Amy put aside her ice cream and explained. It's a long story, but we have a clue that led us to the old big milestone in East Pass. Never knew milestones were that big. It was only a small part showing above the ground. Will confirmed her statement. Aye, the one in East Pass is a disused old millstone, a great flat round giant wheel with a hole in the middle. Well, me and John had to dig it out. We dug a fair pit deep around the stone. Thought we'd get out pretty quick because it began to shift. We were no sooner out than the stone toppled. It blocked the hole completely. Good job, young Ben had a bright idea. The Labrador passed a thought from beneath the table to his master. Tut, tut, you had a bright idea? The blue boy's eyes twinkled as the man slid a ham sandwich to his dog. Sorry about that, pal. It wasn't your idea either, as I recall. Didn't you say Delilah suggested that we use her to move the stone? The big dog huffed a bit as he dealt with the sandwich. But I was the one who knew what she was thinking. Very intelligent mare she is. Take my word. The farmer allowed Amy to continue with the tale. We passed the rope through the hole of the stone and withdrew and threw it over a thick branch of oak going growing nearby. Will harnessed the rope to Delilah and she hoisted the stone clear. As the stone came up, we saw something sticking out of the hole. I thought at first it was an oak root. Mr. Mackey, tell them what it was. Brushing a crumb from his vest, the dapper lawyer allowed himself the briefest of smiles. Ahem. It was the arm piece of a suit of armor. Mr. Blaithwaite identified the object from being around the mid 1300s. Who knows? It could probably have belonged to Cara Del Wynn. We took it back to Miss Wynn's house. The entire arm piece was sealed with tar from the outside and tallow within. When John Preston cut it open, there was a deed perfectly preserved. Almost timely and fortunate discovery. The document states not only title or ownership, but on the back also has a map marking the boundaries of the land granted to Cara Del Wynn quite clearly. So you see here, my friends, my client is the owner of a considerable area of which Chapelvale Village is merely the center. Mark mile east and an arrow pointing downward. That's the clue we had to go on, but our united efforts brought us about with this successful conclusion. Remarkable. The magistrate took Mrs. Wynn's hand. Remarkable indeed, madame. May I be the first to congratulate you upon your elevation to squiracy. You are, through the help of your friends, a very fortunate lady. The old lady blushed, fidgeting with her Elcombe linen gloves. Why, thank you, sir. My late husband, Captain Wynne, always said that the price of true friends is above that of gold. I wish he had lived to see himself a squire of Chapelvale. He loved our village dearly, even though a great deal of his life was spent away from it at sea. When things get back to normal, I'm going to do something he would approve. I will grant all of the people of Chapelvale the piece of land to which their homes stand upon, houses, shops, businesses, or farms. I can do that, that I'm legally own this land, can I? The magistrate rose to leave. You can indeed, marm. Diva Evans came hurrying in with a tray of drinks, elderberry wine and lemonade, which she had begun serving the party. Wait, sir, join us in a toast to our new squiress. Smiling, the magistrate raised his glass. I'm not sure squiress is right, but whatever it is, I'm sure Mrs. Wynne will perform her duties admirably with all of you as her friends. Will Drummond raised his glass. Aye, that's a toast, friends. As the company clinked glasses, they chorused together, to friends. To friends. Celebration at Evans Tea Shop and throughout the village went on into mid noon. Now every villager was his or her own landlord, owning the actual ground their house and business stood on. The square resounded to the noise of happy folk who had accompanied the Marquis previously to set up for those who had planned the destruction of Charleville. Amy Somers was watching Baldwin Evans coaxing her brother to take on yet another portion of ice cream, which she noticed that Ben and his dog had slipped away during the merriment. She found them sitting in an alley together, enjoying the respite from the bustle and noise indoors. The dark-haired girl sat next to Ben, her back against the wall, noting how he and the dog were looking at each other. The two of you are talking together, I can tell. Ben shrugged. We're just exchanging a few thoughts, feeling happy for Miss Wynne and the village. Old Ned looks happy, doesn't he? Amy stroked beneath the black Labrador's chin. He looks very happy indeed. I'll just sit here and be happy with you both. Mischief danced in Ben's blue eyes. He sighed peacefully. All you need for real happiness is the sun on your face and a friend by your side. The girl nodded fondly. That's nice. But what about Ned? The strange boy smiled at her. Ned's the friend I was talking about. She dived on him, pummeling away playfully. Oh, you rotter. Ben giggled helplessly. Mercy, mercy, I meant you too. The dog threw a thought on him. Go on, me girl. Teach that cheeky young pup a lesson. Chapter 47. 1 month later. Summer rolled around toward autumn, while one morning after breakfast, Ned and his dog accompanied Winnie into the village on her weekly shopping trip. They sauntered into the square together, Ned slightly ahead, carrying the woven cane basket in his jaws. Ben stared at the ground, scuffing the dusty cobblestones. Winnie watched him with some concern. What is it, Ben? You don't look too cheerful. Do you feel ill? Is that it? The boy quietly flicked his hair aside and managed to smile. Oh, I'll brighten up, I suppose. Didn't sleep too well last night, that's all. I'm all right, really. The old lady's hand caressed his cheek. You're thinking of leaving, aren't you? Ben took the basket from his dog's mouth and handed it to her. He could not explain the dreams he had haunting him for the past 2 nights. Booming waves, hissing surf, creaking riggings, and the slap of wet sails against taut ropes. Vanderdecker's ranting voice and his mad eyes in his dreams, the angel's voice echoed clearly. When you hear the toll of a church bell, you must leave this place and travel on. The boy turned his clouded blue eyes away from the old lady. You do your shopping, Miss Wynne. I'll go over to the almshouse and see how the new project's coming along. She watched with him, walking across the square with Ned trotting alongside. A boy and his dog. A sudden sadness descended on her, and she called after her strange friend. I'll see you at Evan's tea shop for lunch, Ben. Without turning, he waved his hand. As Ben dropped his hand, his big dog licked it. I know, you don't have to tell me, mate. We share the same dreams, remember? Ben scratched his dog's ear gently. I, we've left a lot of places behind in our travels, but this village and friends we've made, I tell you, it's going to be hard to leave Chapelvale. Looking up, he saw Alex waving to them from the almshouse door. Almost everybody was there. Amy threw an arm around Ben's shoulders, leading him into the building. Sheaves of construction blueprints were laid out on the table. John, Will, Mr. Blaithwaite, and Mr. Mackey were studying them. Amy coughed, waving her hand at the dust that was floating about. She called to Regina and her friends. Stop that sweeping for a moment, please. Could we start carrying these benches outside? Her brother winkled his nose. All right, Miss Bossy Boots. Come on, Regina, Tomo. Let's take this one between us. The old seaman took a pencil from behind his ear and made a minor adjustment to one of the blueprints. There we are. Can extend the evening tea garden out into the old graveyard at the rear. Ben raised his eyebrows. Evening tea garden? The girl nodded. Wonderful idea, isn't it? Dia and Baldwin Evans were employing Haiti Sullivan to run the tea garden 5 evenings a week after the tea shop closed in the late afternoon. They'll be supplying her with materials, of course. Haiti's delighted with the new job. Show him the other plans, Curator Preston. The old ship carpenter assumed a mock-defiant attitude. Ahem. That's my new title, you know, Curator Preston, of the Preston Blaithwaite collection. I'm going to be caretaker, handyman too. Good, isn't it? I've never had that many high-flown titles in my sailing days. Mrs. Wynne wants the old almshouse to be part of our village life, not a run thatching, moldering away unused at the corner of the square. Ruin, moldering away, unused at the corner of the square. Apart from rethatching the roof and the addition to the of window of or two, the outside will look pretty much the same, nice and quite quaint. But inside there will be a collection: the cross, the chalice, the candlestick, and deeds all on display, together with the story of how Chapelvale was saved. We'll get to mention it in the good old Ned. There was Then there's the evening tea garden and the extra room inside for any villagers, meeting, dances, and young people's events. We're getting a small library. Mr. Blaithwaite will be in charge of that. A proper little village hall for everyone to use, eh, lad? The boy shook his friend's big tattooed hand heartily. Sounds wonderful, mate. When will all the rebuilding start? Mr. Mackey interrupted. The dapper little lawyer was positively beaming. First thing Monday morning, my boy. My friend the magistrate and I visited the firm of Jackman, Dowing and Bowie in London last week. We came to an amicable agreement with them. This morning I received a small post, a check for a considerable amount, together with the express wish that the name of Jack Dowing and Bowie never be associated with the past events in Chapelvale, and the hope that all will be forgotten. Mr. Maxey actually performed a small dance of triumph as he pulled forth a check and waved it over his head. Sufficient funds for all almshouse restoration fund. The workmen arrived with materials on Monday, 8 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Blaithwaite looked up from a list of new books he was studying. Quite. Very good. Very good, yes. Will Drummond picked up a crowbar from a wheelbarrow of tools he had brought from the almshouse. Aye, lad. Meanwhile, 'tis our job to clear all the rubbish from the almshouse and make it ready. Here, yar curator, Preston, the crowbar you asked for. John hefted the long, curved crowbar, moving to the center of the room. His eyes blinked and twinkled as he blinked. Can you lend me a hand, shipmate? But first, there's something I've got to do, just to satisfy my own curiosity. He gave the boy a puzzled look. Of course, I'll help you, but what's the crowbar for? The old seaman looked up at the ceiling. It was cracked, damp-stained, and bellied. Ever since I first docked at this almshouse, I wondered what the big, ugly hump atop the roof could be. I ain't going to let no team of strange workers find out afore I do. Cover your eyes and mouths. Everybody, there's going to be a load of dust and rubbish, whitewash coming down. Stand clear now, pals. Here it goes. Boom, bump, thud. A mess of dry rushes, twigs, old plaster, and lime wash showered. Ben and the others shielded their eyes and nose. John shaded both eyes with a hand as he battered furiously at the growing gap in the ceiling. Crack, whump, thud, whack. He made a moment. He stopped a moment and stared into a dark cavity he had made. Push the table over here, quick. Suddenly Ben knew. He grabbed Ned's collar and hurried outside. The black Labrador sensed it too. They began running to get as far away from the almshouse as possible, both knowing that they would not outdistance the sound of inevitable fate. The ground beneath Ben seemed to sway like the deck of the Flying Dutchman, and cold sweat broke out on his face like sea spray. The distant hiss of an escaping steam from a train pulling into the station sounded as if it were the gales off the coast of Terraria del Fuego, not so long ago, so far away. Leave this place. Do not stay to watch your friends grow old and die one by one. While you are still young, you must go. At the sound of the angel's voice, the dog increased his speed, pulling his master's hand on his collar, dragging Ben along with him. John stood on the table. He had not noticed Ben and his dog amid the curtain of dust and rubbish falling. Neither had the others. Will climbed alongside the old ship carpenters, holding up a lantern. What is it? What's up there, John? It's a bell, Will. There's a hump and has a little bell tower. Our new village will have a bell. Listen. The old seaman swung the crowbar and struck the inside of the bell. Bong! The sound of the bell boomed out over Chapelvale as the brazen echoes reverberated far and near. A baby cried. Elena popped her head through the back window of the Alms, looking none too pleased. Stop that noise this instant. I've got little William nicely to sleep. Now you're going to go and wake him, my poor mite. The old man lowered the crowbar, sheepishly stating his excuse. But, marm, that's the first time the bell sounded in nigh 300 years. Elaine stood with her hands on his hip. Oh, is it now? Well, let it be the last for the moment. Get down from that table, Will Drummond, and you too, John Pearson, standing up there like two naughty children. covered in dust and muck. I don't know what. You should see yourselves. John climbed from the table, dusting himself off. Sorry, my love. You've got a nice cup of tea at Evans. I'll get William back to sleep again. Amy could not help smiling as the two men, now friends, as John got off the table. She brushed white flakes from his beard. Go on, the pair of you. Take Elaine over for tea and crumpets. I'll see about to William. John threw his arms about Will and Elaine. Come on, you two. Let's do as Amy says. My treat, though. They were halfway across the square when John noticed his absence. Wait, I'll go ask Ben if he and Ned want to come to the tea shoppy with us. Elaine gave him a playful shove. Go on with you. What does the lad want with old fogies like us? Ben's probably looking after little William with Amy. Leave the young'uns to themselves, you great fusspot. The farmer was in full agreement with his wife. Aye, she's a pretty girl, and he's a handsome lad. Leave 'em be, mate. Engine tooted as the station masters whistled over the railway station. John checked his pocket watch. There goes the 10:50, right on time. Elena patted dust off the old carpenter's back. I've never been on a train. Progress, they calls it. Noisy, great, smelly things. Trains are only for travelin' folk, those in a hurry to leave home. I ain't no rush to go off. Chapelvale's my home. Chapter 48. Saturday arrived again, misty at first, but soon clearing up to reveal a warm, soft day. Mrs. Wynne had done her shopping, and but there was so much of it now that she had paid the delivery boy to take it up by the house. Evan's tea shoppy was pleasantly busy. She sat alone in the window, reading and rereading the precious letter she had received. Baldwin Owens Evans brought a pot of tea and Mrs. Wynn's usual tea cake to the table. Winnie caught her trying to catch a glance of the letter and covered it with her handbag, pretending she had not been trying to pry. Baldwin looked through the window. Look at you, it's Amy and Alex. As the young people drew closer, Winnie tapped the window pane with her old worn gold wedding ring, beckoning them inside. Bring ice cream and lemonade for them, please, Baldwin. The brothers and sisters seated themselves in the window corner. The old lady poured herself tea. What are you two up to today? Still helping John at the almshouse? He's not short of willing hands these days. Alex settled himself against the cushion. We're not. We're going to help him build a new fence and gate for the front. Mrs. Wynne sliced her cake precisely in four and leaned closer to Amy, keeping her voice low. I hope you're not over the weeps and sniffles. I hope you're over the weeps and sniffles now. Come on, let's see a little smile. The girl tried the smile, which did not work. She looked down at the tablecloth. We still haven't heard from him, Mrs. Wynne. Alex blinked several times and sniffed. We liked Ben and Ned too. Why did they have to go? It's not fair. There was silence. Alex looked away from the window as Winnie did her best to answer the question. There's a lot of life that isn't fair. You'll find that as you grow older. When Ben first came to visit me, he said that he could only stay a while, and I never pressed him on it. He's a bit of a mystery, I suppose, as much to you and me as to me. Good boy, a real friend, but so strange. What made him leave so suddenly, I'll never know. His rucksack and change of clothes are still in the room. His room. Did he ever mention anything to you? Amy dabbled her ice cream spoon thoughtfully. I remember the afternoon we met outside the station. I asked him, would he be staying in Chapel Vale? He said, I don't know, maybe, as if he was shrugging off the question. I could never tell with Ben. He had those sort of eyes, cloudy blue sometimes, bright, shining blue at other times. They could twinkle and smile, make you feel happy somehow. But often they would grow distant and mysterious, so you couldn't tell what was going on behind them. Mrs. Wynne watched Amy apply herself to the ice cream. I sensed the same thing. Perhaps not as much as you did, but I'm an old lady, and you're about the same age as Ben, so you understand him better. What about you, Alex? Alex snorted on his lemonade. Boys don't notice things like that about their pals, but I like Ned's eyes. They were friendly, brown, I think. I know I I know this much about Ben though. He made me feel really brave. I'm not scared of bullies or anything these days. That's why I miss him so much. He could have taught me a lot of things more if he stayed. I bet you miss him too, Ms. Wynne. The old lady pursed her lips. It's different when one's older. I can tell myself I remember Ben fondly and always will. You, I, and the whole village. Look at this whole mess we were in before he came. Ben changed all that by getting us to help each other. I think of him as a gift, loaned to us for a while, like a kind of good angel. But that sounds silly, doesn't it? Nobody could imagine a rough and ready angel with a great black dog loping around his heels. At the thought of it, they all burst out laughing. Mrs. Wynne touched the corner of her eyes with the kerchief. Oh dear, what a vision. But now I would like to hear some good news I received today. This will cheer you up. It certainly made me come alive again. Amy touched the letter sticking from the handbag. Is this it? The old lady beamed with pleasure. It certainly is. Would you like to read it out to Alex and me? Well, go on. Mrs. Wynne's happiness was complete. She let Baldwin Evans hover nearby to listen as her young friend read the letter. Hello, Mum. It's your wandering son, Jim. Putting pen to paper. Sorry I haven't been written for a while, but there's some exciting news from you. My wife Lillian and I have been thinking a lot lately of moving back to dear old England. We miss it a lot. Jamie and Rodney are growing fat into big sons. Would you believe Jamie was 14 last week and Rodney 12 in April? School is a bit makeshift in Cerulean, or should I say was, because we've taken them out and decided to coming home to get them a proper education. Most of all, we want them to see their grandma in Chapelvale. How was the old place? I'm always telling Jamie and Rod about when I was a boy in the village. They're dying to see it as well. We've got sufficient savings for my investments, and Lillian would like to purchase a house in Chapelvale. I'll turn my hands to some sort of job. You know me, jack of all trades, or should I say, Jim, ha ha ha. We are present aboard the steamship Ocean Monarch traveling to England, expected to be there within 10 days of you receiving my letter. Now don't fuss, Mum. No need to hurrying up to Liverpool docks to meet us. We'll make our way to Chapel Vale quite easily. I understand you've got a train line running there now. We can you can meet us at the station. Got to close now due to the captain's table for dinner. See you soon. Love your son, Jim and Lilia and the boys. XXXX. P.S. How hope you know some nice young folks the boys can pal up with. Alex clenched his fists and squinched his face up, shuddering with delight. Nice young folks like us, Mrs. Wynne. Will slapped his hand on the table. Ha! Ha! I thought I'd find you here. Come on, you two. John, we're just going round to your dad's, Alex. One of my cows, Buttercup. She's a calf. Elaine and Mara are up with her now. It's a bit early, but she'll be due today. Ma says you should be like to be the one my baby calves when my calves are being born. Amy and Alex chorused eagerly. Yes, please, Will. John was hurriedly hurrying out to the cart full of young people. Last one in the gig doesn't get scones and cream at the farm. Winnie stayed where she was, watching them pile in. Regina, did you save me a place? Of course I did. Hurry up, Alex. Show over, Tomo. Amy sits here by me. Ahoy there. What about me? You'll have to run behind, John. Ha ha ha. Up by me, John. Good job, Delilah. Big strong gal. I'm with you, Will. Giddy up, Delilah. Wilfred Wynne sat watching the sunlight play through the fine haze of dust that had left as the gig sped from the village square. Dreams she had never dared to dream, had come true, yet in the midst of all her happiness, she felt a twinge of sadness, picturing the town lad and his dog a short while across the square. He was wearing a new outfit she had bought for him. The black Labrador trotted by his side faithfully. They halted across the square. He flicked blonde blue eye hair over his eyes and stood there. Those blue eyes never seemed so bright. Ned barked once. Ben raised his hand, arm shouting as he waved, "Miss Wynne!" She rose from her chair, the name forming in her lips, Ben. Then the dust settled, and the old lady was left gazing at an empty village. That is the conclusion of Brian Jake's Castaways of the Flying Dutchman. It's a good book. It's like Ben and Ned are angels, and they travel around, go from different places, taking care of the townsfolk when they need. Good story. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land, and sea. First to fight for rights and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines. Our flags unfurled to every breeze, from dawn to setting sun. We have fought in every clime and place where you could take a gun. In the snow of far-off northern lands, and in sunny tropic scenes, you will find us always on the job, the United States Marines. Here's health to you and to our corps, which we are proud to serve. In many a strife we've fought for life and never lost our nerve. If the Army and the Navy ever looked on heaven's scenes, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines. Semper Fi, hurrah. It is a nice day out. You can see the mountains. All right, let me pray for you. Dear Lord Jesus, have your hand of protection on everyone in the need of housing, transportation, food, who's working their lives, and help them get what they need. Work, school, hobbies. Amen. Goodbye, everyone. Emmanuel, God with us.